All right, hi, this is Casey from Excellent AdventureVan. I thought I'd take a moment to shoot a quick video to show you guys how to rebuild Super Duty steering knuckles, replace the ball joints essentially. We're in the process of building up a 2003 Ford F-250 Super Duty Dana 60 front axle for our van project. And one of the things that you have to do in doing that is you have to remove the steering knuckle and you have to press the ball joints out of the steering knuckle, which requires the use of a ball joint press. Luckily, you can rent a ball joint kit. It's Power Built kit number 46. The part number on it is 648617. You can get this from AutoZone. There's a bunch of different ball joint kits on the market, but they don't all come with the necessary spacers to do the Super Duty steering knuckles. This kit has just a ton of spacers, real nice deep spacers for installing ball joints of this size, and real nice deep cups for pressing them out. To do this job, you're going to need snap ring pliers, and this is of course assuming that you already have the knuckle off the car. There's quite a few YouTube videos that demonstrate that process. You're going to need snap ring pliers, a 5/16 wrench, a 7/16 wrench, and a 7/8 wrench for the C-clamp in the ball joint press. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get everything off of the knuckle that's going to get in your way or potentially break while you're pressing the ball joints out. You got to get the grease knuckles out. There's a snap ring on the bottom that holds the bottom ball joint in place. Just get your snap ring pliers in the grooves and pull that off. And flip this ball joint or this knuckle over so we can get to the grease fitting, which is broken off or plugged. Oh, look at that, it's a different size. I'll have to revisit my tool cabinet to figure this out. And then on the top, there's a vacuum fitting for the vacuum hubs. This is blocked off on ours. And it's really, really tight. And this top bolt, which if I'm not mistaken is for the ABS sensor wire. Go ahead and get the nuts off of the ball joints, dust boots. You just want as much room to work around this knuckle as you can get. So I'll have to come back and take this other broken grease fitting off. But first, now there's only one way to go about this. The ball joints have a lip on them. Here's one that I've already pressed out of another knuckle. So you gotta know which end to press from. If you press from the top, it's not gonna go anywhere because this lip bottoms it out. Your first clue of which direction to push is the snap ring. The snap ring is going to be a retainer, so obviously that's the side that you push from to get that ball joint out. On the top there is no snap ring, and just looking at it, you know, there's grease in here, so it's hard to tell which side is captive and which side is not. So what I say is open up the package and look at your new part. That'll tell you real quick that this ball joint will have to be pressed from the bottom out. Additionally, you cannot press this ball joint out first because there's no way to grab it in the press with this long screw while this ball joint's in place. So we're gonna have to press this ball joint out, get it out of the way, and then start pressing on this ball joint, and the screw of the press will actually go through the hole of the bottom ball joint. So we need to find a ball joint spacer that fits. That looks like about the right size. If I tilt it up and you look inside, you can see that this lip is going to clear the spacer all the way around. This top adapter fits over. Now, the ball joint has to have somewhere to go, and it's going to bottom out in this top adapter almost immediately. So this isn't going to work. So I got to go to the next size up. This one we won't use the adapter, but that ought to give the ball joint enough room. So that's the one we're going to use. All right, let's get this in our ball joint press. It's a beast. I find it's easier to clamp the ball joint press in a bench vise, so that you're only wrestling the knuckle and not both the knuckle and the press. I suppose you could set this up on the knuckle first and then clamp the whole assembly into the bench vise, but it's heavy, it's a little more awkward to move around that way. So we're just going to try it like this. Knock that screw out a little bit. Watch your fingers. Back our screw out a little bit more. It's one of those jobs where it would be really nice to have an extra set of hands, but somebody's got to operate the camera. You want to come around here. So if you look under here, the spacer, you can see that I'm actually on the lip with the top of the spacer. And this is where this thing's a little bit of a pain to wrestle around. If you snug up the screw, it helps hold the knuckle in place, but you got to back it off just a little bit. And that allows you to move your spacer around. Get just about perfectly centered. Then you also have to aim your ball joint so that it passes through the opening in the press to come out the other side. There we go. So now we're centered. Before you just go cranking on this thing, it's always good to add a little bit of oil. Just use a little bit of threading oil. Make sure your vise is nice and tight. And then start applying a little bit of pressure. I also soaked this knuckle in penetrant before we started. So you don't want to just crank down full force on this thing. Oh, you see, it's already moving. If you look right here, it's going right through. And just kind of slow and steady. As you're going, you want to stop and make sure your ball joint is going to pass through the hole in the end of the press. Can't see it in there yet, but it's lined up pretty good. You can kind of reach your finger in and make sure. Now, as your ball joint's about to come all the way through, it gets lighter. The resistance on the screw gets lighter, but you want to at least get a hand on this steering knuckle, because when it pops, we're getting really close now. Right there. See, I'm like one finger. When it pops, your knuckle can fall. So that's the bottom ball joint. All right, so the grease fitting on the upper ball joint ended up being a 7mm. So add that to your list of tools: 5/16, 7/16, 7mm. And 7/8. And that was a plug, which is odd, I guess. I guess they didn't grease the upper ball joint. Anyway, when you're going to press out the upper ball joint, you would think just kind of by default that you'd need a long cup to press it into. But this little short guy actually works because this adapter fits all the way over the ball joint. So even though the cup is short, the ball joint will still press through the cup and then press through the hole in the arbor there. So I want to show you real quick how that fits. This one's zinc plated, so it's really easy to see. But that cup fits around the lip of the ball joint. Adapter fits over. And then here's the fun part. Alright, that should be about right. Make sure everything's lined up. Make sure your cup is centered. And start cranking. Now you don't want to just go full blast on this thing. You want to go a little bit at a time and look for movement. If you feel a hard stop, then you know that your cup is out of alignment. But this actually seems to be moving. There it goes, it's coming right out. Make sure the ball joint's passing through the arbor okay. And it's already getting a little bit looser, which means that it's time to put a hand on the knuckle. getting really loose. So I'm gonna come in here and grab onto this thing. Be ready to support the weight when it pops through. That out of the way. And there you go. Ball joints pressed out of the steering knuckle. We're gonna get this thing cleaned up and a fresh coat of paint on it, and then we'll come back to show you how to press the new ball joints in. Thanks. Okay, we're back, and our steering knuckle is all cleaned up. We've got our new ball joints ready to get pressed in. We're using Moog parts. Moog is one of the better parts that you can buy. Most of their big stuff, big truck stuff, is Hecho and Los Estados Unidos de America, so that's pretty cool. They're a little bit pricey, but you know, for something this heavy, you don't want a failure. So we'll put part numbers in the description. When it comes to pressing the ball joints into the knuckle, just like when you take them out, they got to go in a certain order. Both ball joints press in from the top down. So when you think about it, you would think, well, shoot, I've got to press in the bottom before I press in the top. And normally that would be true, but the way this AutoZone ball joint press works, you can actually pull the top one from the other side, and then you flip it around, the bottom one will go right in. So in this instance, we're actually going to do the top joint first. So opening this up, this is our bottom joint. And this is our top joint. And bear with me for just a second, we'll get this all set up. All right, so we're all set up. Before you go press in your new ball joints, you always want to look them over really closely. You want to look for any burrs or chips along the edge where they press into the knuckle, anything that could hang it up from going in or from sitting flush. There's a little teeny nick right there. I'm gonna get out my file and I'm gonna touch that up. All right, so I'm gonna cover up my ball joint with a rag to keep any metal shavings from getting inside. And I'm just gonna take a couple swipes of the file, knock that burr down, and that's all I'm gonna do. Blow it off. All right, so now we're ready to install. So just like when you press the ball joints out, you have to find the correct combination of installers and cups to press the ball joint in. Pull this back out. This installer fits perfectly over the ball joint and presses against the lip. It's got room for the stud to come all the way through. And this cup for receiving the ball joint, it's perfectly flat. You got to make sure you don't have one with an angle that is different from your steering knuckle. And it's got enough room for the ball joint to pass through. So we're going to slide this into the hole. Now, when we remove the ball joints, I had the press mounted in the vise, and I kind of muscled the knuckle up onto the press and tightened everything up. Because this is freshly painted, we're going to do it here on the bench, and then we're going to move the whole assembly into the vise. It's a little bit harder, but I think it'll keep my paint a little bit nicer. It's kind of tricky to get all these spacers in the right alignment. There we go. All right. looks pretty good. So now we're going to put a little bit of lube around the splines. And we're going to hold the clamp with our hand and turn the screw just a little bit to kind of snug things up and get them started. And now that it's tight, keep our hands clean so we don't mess up the new paint. Alright, so just like before, you don't want to just go cranking away. I'm going to go very slow and look for movement at the ball joint. And this thing is going in like butter. You're going to take your time and you want to feel for any binding or a hard stop, which could be the ball joint coming into contact with the receiver cup. But it's just going right home. And now it's nice and snug. Gonna crank down a little bit and then back it off. Alright, so there's our upper ball joint installed. You want to look all the way around to make sure it's fully seated, and it is. It looks great. You want to check that it's come through the knuckle properly on the backside, and it looks pretty good. Wipe off our excess lube. And it's just that simple. So that's the upper ball joint. Now we're going to move on to the lower ball joint. So again, we want to inspect our part a little bit. It actually surprises me how beat up new ball joints are right out of the box. I think in the manufacturing process, they probably just wing them all into a bin and they get a little beat up. Can also be very hard with a brand new ball joint to get the stud to aim straight, but it's very important. So I might actually have to clamp this in the vise to straighten that stud out because it needs to fit the installer cup just right. So let's do that. Set that out of the way. I've got soft jaws in the vise. I won't mar anything up. And I'm not going to crank down on it. I'm just going to leave it in there snug. Oh, yeah, much easier. Get that stud nice and straight. Alright. So no burrs or imperfections that are going to keep this from going into its final spot in the steering knuckle. So we're going to set that in. I've kind of already gone through and figured out which cups are going to fit. And that is the combination we're going to use. So as I said before, this thing's going to actually flip around. The screw's going to face the other way this time. All right, nice and snug. bit of oil. We'll hold the press in our hand and get a couple of turns on the wrench just to get things started. And now we're going to flip it around again. See, that's why I like mounting the press and the vise, and just putting the steering knuckle up into place. It's a little bit harder with all the extra weight, especially at the end of a long hot day. So that's nice and snug. My screw is looking a little bit dry, so I'll put a little bit more oil on there. And it is going in like butter. So much easier going back in than it was coming apart. Don't forget to check your progress as you go. And that's it. It's bottomed out. Always make sure we're all the way in. Back it off. That. And don't forget that the lower ball joint has a snap ring. So you want to make sure that you pushed your ball joint all the way through and exposed your snap ring groove. There should be a new snap ring in the box. Got your snap ring pliers. And make sure the snap ring sits all the way in the groove. And that's it. Now the knuckle's ready for reinstall on the vehicle. You just got to put your Zerks back in and you're ready to go. So that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll do some more on this series of the sub-assemblies of a front axle rebuild, and then we'll get to the front axle install into the vehicle. Thanks for watching.